Science spoke to me and gave me some insights into travel.
Travel. What sort of travel?
He spoke to me about tourism. You see, these days, many people travel all over the world to faraway destinations. Science warns us of the dangers lurking in excessive travel. The biggest danger in excessive travel is that it is a waste of the person's resources such as time and money.
But surely it's all right to travel, if one can afford it.
Science has warned us to not buy unnecessary goods and services just because we can. Most of everything we buy is made from non-renewable resources. And most of the services we use are enabled by non-renewable energy. The majority of long-distance travel, especially for tourism, is unsustainable in an environmental sense. Traveling several thousand kilometers at speeds of 700 kilometers an hour burns up a lot of fuel. Science commands us in the Bible to take only what we need and leave the rest for future generations.
But isn't traveling overseas a good character-building experience? Doesn't it broaden a person's horizons? When I meet someone who has traveled overseas, they always seem more interesting.
But is it a syncretic way of life? We will see. No doubt, a person who has traveled more seems to be more interesting. But what does this mean in real terms? Why should this person seem better than everyone else, just because he has some interesting stories of faraway lands to tell? Science says that half the problem is in the beholder. Imagine that you have traveled to some exotic land. At the end of it, consider, what have you got to show for it? A few photos, some souvenirs, some memories in your mind, some acquaintances. Science says that it is far better to use that time and money to create something concrete of value that you can be proud of. We take pride in the number of Facebook friends we have, yet how well do you know the people living right next to you, your neighbors?
Isn't it good for young people to learn about other cultures and therefore learn to be more tolerant?
Not always. Most young people cannot afford to travel overseas, yet they do anyway. I'm not just referring to money. Young people who have not completed their life cycle cannot afford to waste their youth on selfish pursuits such as tourism in faraway lands. At a time in their lives when they should be focusing on creating a family, they travel to distant lands instead. At the end of it, they're a little older, the looks have faded a little, and they have invested a lot of money on something that gives little to no return. There are better ways to teach people to be tolerant.
What about happiness? Doesn't travel make a person happier?
This warning from science also ties in with his teachings about happiness. In these modern times we are led to believe that going on holidays to distant lands will make us happier. Yet a person who travels more is no happier than someone who travels less. If you hadn't gone on that trip, and as a result didn't meet that nice person there, would you feel sad because you didn't meet that person? In a way, happiness works in retrospect. You only feel happier or sadder than before if you can look back and see the difference between your happiness then and now. But what if you didn't go forward and therefore never was in a position to look back? You would think that you were happy and wouldn't know any better.
You're right. It's the principle of ignorance is bliss, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Consider this, only 100 years ago, most people spent their entire lives within about a 50-kilometer radius, if that. Were they less happy than we are now? We've lost sight of the simple things. We pick friends from afar instead of making friends among the people around us. The rise of internet dating is a sad commentary of the world we currently live in.
You're right. We've become so used to picking and choosing that we've forgotten that our ancestors had to make do with what they had. Played the cards they were dealt, as it were.
There is another dimension to science's teachings about happiness. Envy is a dangerous emotion that the ancients recognized. The Bible and other ancient texts warned about envy. The power of envy is its ability to show you the difference between your happiness and that of others. Envy can create feelings of unhappiness because you perceive that others are happier than you are. This is why science warns us to be wary of envy. It is one of the most dangerous emotions.
It isn't always envy though. Young people often want to copy their peers. It's almost a tradition among students to take a year off from study to travel, a gap year.
Students who travel like that act as role models to other students. The role model is a vehicle of envy. Young people are especially vulnerable to role models. They are lured into squandering their youth, the precious gift that science gave them. Science tells us that young people should instead put their youth, time, and money to better use. Some people who travel can even become addicted to it.
Addicted to travel.
Yes, those who are addicted to travel like nothing better than to go on around the world trips. They often choose to find work wherever they are to save enough for the next leg of the trip. One can easily spend many years doing this. Some people don't realize that they've been traveling too much until it's too late.
Too late. What do you mean?
It is easy for people to be so caught up that they don't realize the importance of their life cycle until their life cycle systems are already starting to shut down. This is particularly alarming for women because the female biology is far more time constrained than male biology.
But surely travel cannot be categorically wrong.
Travel is not all evil. But most long-distance travel is unnecessary and unsustainable. It can be beneficial to a scene-cyst in many ways at the right time in life. It is far better for a scene-cyst to travel after completing the life cycle. One of the biggest benefits of travel at an appropriate time includes being able to spread the good news and to sow the seeds of scene-cism. Darwin himself might not have formulated the theory of evolution had he not traveled around the world.
Do you advise that young people shouldn't travel?
Science does not absolutely forbid young people to travel. In some cases it can be a good thing. A young scene-cyst should consult with his elders and make an informed decision. However, the allure of traveling can be seductive. Young people are especially ill-equipped to resist the temptation to travel excessively because of the glamour attached to it. It's a slippery slope indeed.